Okay, welcome to the first Victoria mid-cycle. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
thanks. Yeah, I'm avoiding putting on a headset. Okay. Um, yeah, so the Etherpad, Gorka pasted the link in the chat if you need it. So please open that locally so you can take notes or put in comments or questions or whatever. Okay. Roll down to the topics. Okay, so project updates just real quickly. Um, we've released some new versions of the OS Brick library and Cinder, and also the Python Cinder client. I've been keeping Launchpad updated, so if you take those links, you can see the Groovy, chart of all our releases. So what's been happening is we had to release OS Brick through, well, all the ones we could release. So Stein forward. And we also patched Rocky and Queens. Yes, we did. So for Brick, and we had to redo it because it turned out that the original fix for that security problem didn't work in Python 2.7. So in Brick, everything's merged and released. I'm having trouble getting the Cinder releases out. The only change is that they'd include the updated requirement for the fixed Brick library. But there's been problems in the Stein gates. So for train, I've got a release proposed, so that should be okay. But the Brick's been released, so it's available if people need it. So I haven't really heard anything, but that's the state. Also, I just want to throw out there that it's possible that somebody else could be in charge of releases for Cinder if they'd like to do it. I'll be happy to work with you, show you how I'm doing stuff in Launchpad, and you may have much better ideas on how to do this kind of thing, and also maintain our releases Etherpad, which is probably out of date because I haven't had time to go do that. So if anybody would care to do that, you don't have to be a core, but being a core doesn't hurt, of course. So your job is just to keep track of deadlines and then propose releases. We have this rough idea that we release from the stable branches every month, and these security fixes have been taking care of that for us because we've had to release. But anyway, so that's a possibility. Just ping me if you'd be interested in taking that on. It's fun. You get to propose a lot of stuff to releases. You can work with Sean and me, so it's Cinder people there. So it's kind of a comfortable thing. Okay, last thing, just as a general update, I didn't want to confuse things by sending out another poll, but we did discuss having a monthly virtual meeting. So I'll put out a poll for the technology. Gorka had proposed that the way we conduct the meetings is that we'll simultaneously do it in whatever video software we use plus IRC. So for people who are prefer to communicate by typing, if it's easier, they'll be able to do that. So we'll give that a try to see how that works. I was thinking we could do the last meeting each month, just as, because we had to pick one. So I figured the last one each month. So this would be the last one in this month. And it just so turns out we're having a video meeting. And then I lost my notes here. I had something else I was going to say. But anyway, so I'll put out, if that sounds okay to everybody, we'll probably have to adjust because I'm sure it's going to conflict with something at some point. But, we can adapt. But I think the proposal is we just do a virtual meeting, last meeting of each month, and then we'll try it out and see what works. So I'll put out the poll for what kind of video software. I think the proposals were BlueJeans, Zoom, and MeetPad. So if anybody thinks of anything else that would be something worth trying or at least asking about, please go ahead and just add it to the Etherpad here. So I'll put out a survey later. Okay, and that's all the we'll talk at the bottom. I've got the review for milestone 1, but that's basically it. Okay, Yvonne, you're up with the first topic about backups. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So it's just some continuation of topic we started to discuss the PTG. I added backup type section to my spec, and one thing I would like to discuss is how this will be stored in the database, because actually there are two possible options how we'll introduce backup types in the database. We can create new tables or just rename existing one and make generic cinder type table or something like it. So I would like to get some feedback on this topic to get this spec in for Victoria cycle.
So I was reading it. So if we did, if you're going to modify current tables, which ones, what would be the appropriate ones to store this stuff in, do you think?
Oh, we can change volume type and volume type access spec table to have some more generic name and add the column with what actually type is it, backup or volume. Or we can introduce new tables like backup type and backup type extra specs.
I mean, I guess my feeling is our database isn't that complicated that adding more tables might wouldn't be a problem, I don't think. And I think the other advantage is that the backup types and the backup extra specs seem, well, I guess I'm just thinking in terms of if for some reason it turns out that things need to be changed a bit for backups, that they need to be treated more differently than volume types, we could at least, if we had to make changes, we'd just change those tables and not the other ones. So I don't know. I mean, I guess they're flexible enough as they are, but I don't.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines. I mean, the only reason that it would be good to have them in the same table would be if we know that they're always going to be basically identical to each other. But it seems less likely to cause headaches later to just put it in a new table.
Yes, yeah, that's sort of my thought.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Are there any advantages to
To me as well. I also like the idea of creating a different table for this, just to be sure that we don't break anything in the volumes at least.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
Volumes have also more different stuff in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and volumes are like sort of our thing. So okay, so that seems good.
Yes. Okay, this option works for me. I just wanted to confirm with everybody face to face. It will be faster than we'll get several iterations in spec for reviews. So
Yeah.
I'll just update my spec after the meeting.
Okay, great. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. All right, cool. That was quick.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or observations? Okay, next thing on the agenda is the Brocade fiber channel zone manager driver. So you may recall Brocade has announced that they aren't supporting this thing anymore. But they announced it like right after. Anyway, it was too late for us to deprecate it before Usuri. So it was deprecated in the last release, subject to removal in Victoria, but sort of loosely the way we've been doing that. Yeah. So the situation is we've got this thing, but we weren't sure it worked under Python 3. And we now know that in fact it doesn't. So, I mean, I know that because we got a customer case. So, I'm thinking we should just go ahead and remove it. The problem doesn't, I mean, I don't know I didn't look into how bad the problem is. I mean, meaning widespread. But it's one of these things where in Python 3, a bunch of things that used to return lists return iterators. And so you can't deal with them in quite the same way. So it might be a simple fix, but then again, it might just be the indicator that you're going to have problems all over the place. So since Brocade themselves have said they have no intent of supporting this thing in Python 3, I think we should go ahead and remove it in Victoria. I wanted to bring it up though instead of just put up the patch, because last time it came up, somebody pointed out that we have basically just the Brocade FCZM and the Cisco one. And it would kind of be bad not to have choice. But on the other hand, it's always better to know that something works. So anyway, so my proposal is we should go ahead and get rid of this thing. But I wanted to throw it out there and see if anyone had a strong opinion otherwise that we should take a different action about this. I will shut up and let somebody else respond.
Since I was the last time I was opposed to doing it, I would like to say that maybe we can propose the patch to remove it and leave it with a work in progress thing. Like give me a month to see if I can get it to be working in Python 3, and if I don't find the time, well, then we just remove it.
Even if we get this working with Python 3, how can we be sure that everything will be working in the future without vendor support and without third-party CI?
Yeah, I mentioned not removing it, not leaving the deprecated flag, so it can still be deprecated. We know that it worked. For example, I can run the test at the end of the cycle just to confirm that we can keep leaving it as deprecated. Like, hey, there's no support. Yeah, we know it works, but there's no support. Yes, you have two different drivers.
Yes, I understand the reason why do we want at least two drivers for zone manager, but if vendor does not support it, I don't think we should even care about this driver, because it requires some proper hardware and it requires some support for CI.
Well, I think this is the kind of situation where the right thing to do would be to remove it and get them to support it, but that's not going to happen. So if we go with the approach of just removing it, I think it is a big loss in terms of saying what Cinder has. When you say we just have one zone manager, it doesn't look great when you look at the project. So that's why I was more inclined in looking to a compromise solution where we say, yeah, it's not officially support. You have the driver. We know that it worked at this date or whatever, and yep, support will be in a best effort kind of way, community instead of vendor kind of thing. I
Maybe
feel, Ivan, that it's not ideal and it's not what we would want, but
maybe it's time to revisit our decision with out of tree drivers and move this driver out of tree of Cinder repo and introduce some official unsupported or lucky drivers.
Saw this coming. So can I ask a different question here? Do we have any idea how many people will be impacted by removing the Brocade zone manager? So, Brian, you said this was a customer case that came in, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was either that or one of our support people was just trying to see what would happen if you. I'll have to investigate. But it was somebody not on this team discovered this, I guess is what I would say.
Okay.
For sure. Now I'm assuming. I mean, Brocade announced this. I'm assuming they like contacted their customers to let them know.
Yeah, I saw. I think she sent me a copy of the email that they sent out to customers.
Okay.
At a minimum, we need to send an email to the mailing list saying, "Hey, we've been waiting for this to break. It looks like it's broken.
Okay.
We're headed down the path of removing it. Speak now or forever hold your peace."
Okay. So all right, what I'll do is I can put up the work in progress patch to remove it, so it shows that we're serious. I'll send out the email. We'll have some time if Gorka wants to take a look, or if somebody wants to help Gorka, if anyone else is really interested in this, and we'll see what the response from the mailing list is, and then we're going to be meeting again in not too far from now at R-9, so we can just come to a final decision then. So I'll mention that in the email too, so people know there's a definite deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then okay, but it's good to have choice, but on the other hand, right, I sort of agree with Yvonne that it's even better to know that stuff works. Yeah, and with the out of tree thing, like this is a really tough one because, right, the vendor doesn't even want to have it out of tree. They just don't want to mess with it, period, in Python 3. So I don't know where we'd put this sucker.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. So give me an action to hit the mailing list, and then we'll revisit at part 2 of this mid-cycle. All right, and then so we'll have a little bit of time, but so if you have thoughts, please feel free to articulate them either on the mailing list or at the Cinder meetings. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, I guess Walt didn't make it today. Walt was a big proponent of keeping it in also, I think. So,
yeah.
Right. So I'll have a little more time to think about exactly what the impact of this is on the Cinder project and what to do about it. Okay. Anything else? And Jay, thanks for taking notes because you already noticed I wasn't doing it. All right.
Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to actually pay attention, and that helps me to do that.
Sounds good. Okay. Moving right along. Let's pick up the volume list query optimization. I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but that's Huxing. You can tell me how to say your name. If you want to, oh, go ahead.
Here I found a problem. When we fail to manage a volume, we use list or snapshot to get the volume list. We can see that the schedule of the volume is error. But when we filter the list of volumes by specifying the schedule as error, we found in the volume list there was no the volumes that failed the manager. This will confuse the user. So I think as an end user, it would like to include a volume with the schedule error managing in the volume list, filtered by error schedule. It is similar as creating and deleting. The below is the link. The further is a bug about this, but the Eric suggested me to talk about it in a spec. So the second link I put an spec. We can see details in the link.
Okay, thank you. I should know this, but I don't. Can we filter by these statuses, so like error underscore managing, and pull up those using the current API? Is that possible?
I think.
Or do you have to be an admin or something?
This is because in the database, the schedule of the volume is error managing, but when we use the list to get the volume list in the API layer, we change the error managing schedule to error. So so we can see the schedule is error, but we can't filter out it because in the database the schedule is not error. This will make user confused.
So the problem here is that we're trying to use status of objects to communicate what happened with this manage operation. I think the easiest alternative to address the use case here, which is you try to manage a volume and it fails and you have a hard time seeing where it landed and what state it's in and that kind of thing. I think the easiest way to do this would be to wire up our error message API properly for manage, and then you could just run sender manage -- poll and have it tell you what happened, rather than having to go manually query for search on statuses. One other piece of this we may want to consider is that we have a few fairly confusing statuses. Like there's a status of a volume error managing deleting, which I think there are maybe code reasons that was created, but I would argue that some of this would be a lot easier if we didn't have statuses at all that were named things like error managing deleting, because it's just confusing and no one is going to know really what to do with that. But The objection I had on the proposal so far basically was that I don't think we can let somebody search on the API for volumes that are in status error and then return volumes that are just in other similar statuses that aren't error, because that opens up all kinds of other problems.
Eric, could it be okay? Because I agree with that, but I think the proposal has merit in terms of I want to know the volumes that are in any error state. Could it be acceptable to accept error asterisk or something like that as the volume?
Yeah,
Then
I think, can you already do that with the generalized filter stuff that we have? I didn't go try it, but that might already exist.
Can we search? Can we search for volume in error? Stadio. Fuzzy search.
I'm not sure, but I mean, we did some work a few years ago on some of the filter stuff that would maybe enable that.
You mean we use fuzzy match?
Right.
Like a wild card for error star.
There's definitely precedent in Cinder for doing that with some similar operations. I don't know if you can do it with this in particular or not.
I think we can include error management in the error stadio, because the error management stadio is only used in the quarter detail in the quarter deal when we want to delete or manage a volume. If we found the stadio of volume is error managed deleting, then we will skip to deal with quarter when we delete or manage the shell. This is the only way we use the stadio of error managing. So I think we can include the error managing when we flatter by error stadio. It has nothing affect other.
The answer is not to just include it though. I mean, we can't just include different values when someone searches for a value on a volume list. What we can do is go solve the how do you handle quota for a volume that was attempted to be managed and failed in a different way. I mean, what we probably should have done instead of introducing new statuses for that originally was just put a flag somewhere inside of Cinder instead of in the user visible status. But we can't just tack on volumes in various different states when somebody searches for volumes in one state, because they're making all kinds of assumptions about what that means and what you can do with them. And it kind of just breaks what the API is supposed to do if we do that.
I'm sorry. Could you please write your key point in the pad? My English is a little poor.
Yeah.
We can filter volumes by error status, but the response in the volumes is that does not contain error messaging status. We all mean to include error message when we get volumes I think I answered the question above. Can we search for volume in error status? Hello?
The question was, how do you retrieve the error message?
Yes.
You can query for messages based on an operation you did by request ID or on a volume ID. We need to probably put a little code in to make sure messages are always generated for this scenario, but we have infrastructure that's well established to do that.
I think we just need to add the error messaging to the error message to as the same as the error.
I think that would be really welcome if there was a proper error message stored for when the error manage operation happens, right, Eric? That would be great.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the messages API, right?
Right.
These things. Let me put the there. Right. So we have, because we have so many asynchronous operations, we also have this user messages API.
I think their crazy user message is another thing. Is different about this problem. We in the code I think now it will create a user message when we when the driver failed to measure the volume, but the schedule letter problem is different from the user message.
Yes, but the problem that we see with the code you're proposing is that basically we change the behavior in Cinder, and we are no longer returning what the users are expecting. Because in your case, you want this to behave this way. But people may have been already used to the other way it works, where they may want to just query the error and not error managing or any other type of error or error deleting, because your change says that error and error managing for filtering is the same thing. But why not error deleting? And why not error whatever else we have in Cinder? That's the problem. If you mix them all together, then you are completely changing how scripts and users may expect it to work. So that's a problem.
Others may be already using this as its point is.
Exactly. One thing we could do, I don't know if others would like it, it's kind of hacky, we could add a new Cinder API microversion, which what basically does is when it receives error, it says it's not only error, but error, error deleting, error managing, and then groups them all and makes the query. So instead of making the change at the API level, we do it, at the DB layer, we do it at the API. And that's where we say error. When they ask me for error, I will return them all. And that way, we don't affect any users only doing it. And they still get a behavior that I think it has value.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know if, yeah, sorry, right. Yeah.
no, I just sort of have two questions. The first one is the use case for this. When we're talking about a user, do we mean end user or primarily an operator? Because that sort of
I
makes a
think
difference.
it's end users.
Okay.
I think it's end users because an admin probably already knows the difference between error managing. It's already used to our weirdness. But a normal user, which is the use case here, they say if it failed, I search for error, and it's not there, and that's their problem. They want a way for people to search error and find all the volumes that are in some kind of error state.
So we could do something like add a micro version that contains an extra filter flag that would be something like show all, or we'll have to figure out
Exactly.
something. But yeah.
Exactly.
So we keep the default behavior would be the current behavior, but with this new micro version, you could see everything if you wanted to. I don't know that this
Exactly.
I think Eric's still gonna have a problem with this, but he had to drop. But anyway, so the Cinder manage thing wouldn't work for this because we want end users to be able to see these things. So,
well, I think we should also add not only error managing, but the other ones as well.
Right. I think that was either in the spec or the patch.
In the patch, I'm looking right now, and
okay, maybe it was in
they only.
Okay.
Yeah, they only added the managing part, which so error was error and error managing, creating was creating and managing, deleting one deleting, and error managing deleting. Those were there. So my two alternatives are either a new micro version or a new micro that does it automatically, or a new micro version that you can pass error in a wildcard and you get them all. But I think they will prefer the micro version that does the error and everything. Yeah.
I agree with the end the end point in the iPad. The user maybe he don't know the status of error manager or error deleter. They use the error status too many times. So I think we should make error contains error manager and error deleting. If we add error manager or error deleting to the filter, that we should tell the user if they want to get the error volumes, they should filter error volume status with three status: error status, error manager, or error deleting, right?
Right now, I think that's the case. If they want to see it, they have to query specifically for all the three errors. That's what we have right now. And the other alternatives are the ones I propose, and I'm not still sure that Eric would like them, but definitely I think most of the people reviewing this code is not happy with this particular change because it can break the current behavior.
This would be addressed with release notes or an update to help test.
So would you be okay with a new microversion that behaves the way you want it? I mean, that when if there was a microversion, let's say 3.90, I don't care, in where passing value error worked the way you wanted, would that be okay? It's a bit more code, but it would have the user would be able to see it as long as they pass the right microversion.
Yes. I think I get your mean.
Okay, because I think that's even if Eric is not happy with that one, I think the other reviewers, I would not be opposed to that approach.
Yeah, and I think,
for example,
like in the Python Cinder client, right? The way we have it set up is it always uses the highest micro version it can by default. I'm pretty sure we changed that. No? Because I think.
Did we? Maybe I missed that.
Yeah, I think we changed it. So then that's good, because then when you do the help text, you would see this as like the show all or whatever we decide to call it. You would see that in the help text when it applies. So that's good. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a matter of, documentation so that people know that error underscore managing or whatever actually exists. So they know to look for it. But we don't want to really hide it by just showing those all as error. Although I think we do that for deleting, right?
No, I think it's the same behavior in all cases. Deleting has the same problem.
It just doesn't show up at all.
If you do deleting only when the deleting problem, it only displays that one. Yep.
Yeah, I'm confusing the patch with the current behavior. Okay. So is that helpful, Huxon? You feel free to bring this up at the next meeting. But I think, do you have enough information to revise the spec?
What?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you got enough feedback so far so that you know what direction to take in revising the spec.
Okay. Please add the agreement and the spec, and then we update the spec.
Okay. All right. I'll take a note to put some of these comments into the spec. Okay. I'll try to get that done later today, so that you can get working on it. And when you revise it, feel free to put a note in the IRC channel to remind me to go look at the revision, and we can keep working on that. Okay. Are there any other?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for bringing this up. Are there any other questions or comments?
So I'm sorry if I missed something, but what was the problem with user messages?
Well, the user messages is not that there was a problem, but they said those are two different things. One is to know why it was in error managing, let's say, and the other is I want to find the volumes that are in error. I ask to manage whatever, and then I check for error state, and I don't get all the volumes that are in error state, not error as the literal string, but as a conceptual error. So that's the difference. We are searching for. So they say, yeah, the error messages are fine, but it's completely different thing than what we are discussing.
Okay.
Because, for example, they also wanted to get the managing and creating to be merged into a single. When you ask for creating, you also get managing, for example, you know? So that's not about an error message because there's no error there. You just want to know which resources are being in progress, let's say, created. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments or observations before we move on? Let me just myself. Okay. All right, the next topic is supporting revert to any snapshot. I don't know if John is here or not. Oh, yes. Yes. So we had discussed this at the PG, I think, but I can't remember
This has
exactly.
been discussed multiple times before, I think. And
Yes,
if Eric were here, he'd be explaining why we haven't done it before. Oh, he's already -1 the spec.
But if I remember correctly, the PTT, we decided that there is actually a way to do it for any drivers. What we need the spec to say is that drivers by default, we say that drivers cannot do it. In the base driver, we say, nope, I cannot do this myself. So the Cinder general code needs to do the generic way, which is basically create volume from a snapshot and then DD everything from there. Not great, but there is a generic way of doing it. And the drivers that can do the optimized way, they just do it. I think that's what we agreed the last time.
yes, but this spec does not describe anything about drivers. And that's the issue.
Mm-hmm. Is the person that added the topic around?
And do we know how many drivers will support this feature?
Sorry, do we know how?
How many drivers will support this?
Well, I think back in the day that we just prevented this from being in the initial spec because one driver couldn't do it. There was one driver that couldn't do it, so we said, yeah, if one cannot do it, let's start small and then move from there. So I assume that there more than one should be able to do this. I think Pure Storage could do it, if I remember correctly from the PTG.
Yeah, and I think there was a email either yesterday, well, earlier this week to the mailing list replying about this. Let me paste the, I just found what we had said. So the questions we had at the mid-cycle were how many drivers can do it, how many can do it without losing later data, and we still had the workaround that you can just create a new volume from any snapshot. So instead of reverting, you could just do it and move from there.
Yeah, but the idea would be that drivers, that we do that for the users automatically, right? Instead of them having to write a script to do it manually.
Right.
As we test, the RPG driver can support this operation, and the install mass driver and also support. You can see in the message pattern, in the message.
Insert Inspur and RBD driver. Storewise driver, yeah, that makes sense. So is the problem here that we don't support a generic way of doing this?
Yeah. I think that basically we are stuck with the original spec that only reverted to the first one, and we need just the next step, which is for drivers to specify when they can do it efficiently. Well, not efficiently, basically not breaking everything if you revert to an older one. And if they don't do that, we have to add the generic code in Cinder, like we usually do.
Which is basically just creating a hack that does create volume from snapshot, right?
Well, you can call it a hack, or because I mean, I don't call it a hack because that's what we've been doing in the generic mechanism forever.
Right.
If we cannot do it, then an efficient way we do how we would normally do it manually, which is the but it has the advantage that you keep the original volume ID and everything, which in some cases may be important.
Okay.
So would we want to require the generic way to do this, or just allow this as like an optional feature?
Historically, well, whatever. We've always wanted to have the generic one because we don't want to start introducing features that only some vendors support and not others.
Right.
We try to get the feature works, maybe slower, but you can get it done so that the users don't need to know why is this failing. for this volume, but not for this other one. Because it could depend on the volume type, and then it's madness.
Yeah. So based on historic support for functionality, this would be a gap in our current functionality.
I would say that the spec just needs to be like a little bit more detailed in terms of these steps that we've mentioned, the generic mechanism, how drivers can report it, and things like that. And by reporting, I mean either a flag in the class or like the email proposes, just have a different method to do it and detect if exists in the driver or not. I don't know if the person who wrote the spec actually knows or is aware of the history of some drivers breaking or losing all the snapshots after to revert. Because by the looks of it, it's not even mentioned in the spec, which I would expect somebody to mention that the original problem was that and that we want to work around it or propose a solution or something.
Good advice. I think we can leave this in the spec, and then we update the spec with these questions.
Yes, I think the spec needs to be updated with how drivers should approach this and the alternative for drivers that cannot do it. Because if they do it by themselves, they lose all later snapshots than the one you have reverted to. So if you have three, if they revert to the first one, they lose the next two. That's a big problem for them. So the spec needs to propose a solution for those as well.
Yeah. I know. I think I get your mean, but I think we cannot cover all channels, but we can write more as soon as possible. We can get the driver. We can get the driver and then cover your questions. But please add your questions. Leave in the spec.
Okay, we will add them, but it's not only about drivers and the API, it's also about the volume manager, the Cinder volume. The manager there
Okay.
will need to do extra work for the generic. Like if you look into the migration, volume migration, you will see that we have generic code in the manager, Cinder volume manager, to do the generic things for when it's not possible to do it efficiently. Similar to this one. I will add the comments to the spec.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't know if everyone's seen the chat. There are a few comments in there too.
And if someone know these questions, please answer and give some guide. Maybe we just only can test the mass driver and don't cover the all drivers. I think
the answers to the comments in the chat, I think the answer is we should not be limiting the snapshot. Once we implement the spec properly, there's no longer any need to limit the snapshots, because either the driver supports it and does it itself and we're good, or if it doesn't support it, the Cinder volume code will do it in the non-efficient way, which is it will create a volume from the snapshot, then it will attach the volume from that snapshot, and then it will copy the data. So either way, there's no need to limit anymore. Yes, that's correct. We can, with the last comment, we can add a flag to the class where it says whether it supports it or not, the feature.
But
and if it doesn't support it, we have to do it in the manager.
So I think that's like the key thing to note here is that if we want to do this at all, we have to do it. So we have to provide the generic way, and then the flag is only there so that you would know that it's possible to do it very efficiently for a particular backend. But we need to, as part of this, in order to allow it at all, we need to make sure that there's a generic way to do it that makes sense. So with the generic way, if you build from the middle, so you have 5 snapshots and you decide to revert to snapshot 3. So that leaves 4 and 5 from the future. So when you do it the generic way, what do you do with snapshots 4 and 5? So you revert to 3.
I know RBD snapshot can support the default snapshot is 5, but others we don't test.
I guess what we need then is just to say in the spec So what, for instance, RBD does for the situation? What happens to the snapshots in this case? And then so that we have a clear model for what some particular implementation is doing, and then the generic thing would have to do something similar. So I guess the key point is the community is not against this, but it's a little bit more involved than just allowing the drivers that can do it to do it. Okay, are there any questions now? So I'll take an action item to get the comments here onto the spec, so that you can work with them there, and then we can continue on the mailing list or in the, on IRC, as we get closer to the spec freeze.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, we may just have to be better about, I guess, well, everything. Okay.
Thanks, sir. I think this topic also need leave comment in the spec and show your agreement. We are English not very good. So some idea maybe we can't understand online. Please forgive. Thanks.
Yeah, that's okay. And what I'm apologizing for not getting written stuff onto the spec sooner. So thanks for being a little patient about that. But from now on, just ping me in IRC if you don't see comments, and I'll just make sure there are comments there, and we can communicate in writing. If that's easier, that's fine. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing this up. And if there's anything that's not clear when I do put the comments on the spec, make sure you ping me in IRC or shoot me an email, whatever's, because we're probably way offset in time zone. So email might be the best way. And then we can continue this on the mailing list just to get this worked out. All right. Any other questions or comments about that? Okay. Okay. Let's move along. The next thing is wanted to do a review of what we were expecting to accomplish at milestone 1, which happened last week, and what's actually happened. Okay, so I think what I may have to do is just ask each core to take on like one of these topics so that we can just stay on top of them. So what we've got going on, if we look at the so we got the NFS volume encryption that Sophia's been working on. I get the
Hey.
Hi, Sophia. And I guess
Hi. Sorry, I wasn't.
that's okay. What's the major patch for that now?
Well, the status of the patch is sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh yeah. No, it's okay. Just a quick update. Eric comment on the patch yesterday. Maybe some of you saw that, but I already updated the patch and it's ready to review again. And yeah, let me know if something come up or is wrong or you think I can improve it. I'm open to everything. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm committing to everything. Yes, I owe you a review on this for sure because I don't see my name anywhere. So, oh no, I do show up at some point just to drop the priority. Right. So I haven't been any help. Okay. So this is very close. So reviews would be good. And then we've got Dongfang's the volume local cache spec. We need to get some action on that. Looks like Eric's made a comment or two. They've been addressed. Yeah, I guess what I'd like to, I know everybody's busy, but I guess I should just send something out to the mailing lists everywhere. What I'd like to see is if we can get some review action for Sophia's patch and for the volume local cache, so we can get those merged in the next, as soon as possible, I guess. The other thing that's out there is the Hitachi driver. That patch was just revised. I know Lucio has been giving some reviews on that, so thank you, and Sean. But I think all the Lucio's been good about checking to make sure that the CI is actually testing everything that they're claiming is supported in the driver. So that's been very helpful. So when I looked this morning, it looks like the CI is working. It's been updated to actually test the stuff that they're claiming is supported. So I think that one is like very, very close to going. So I'm not so worried about that one. But it would be good if people could concentrate on when you have time to review, hit the volume local cache and Sophia's NFS encryption. And if we can get those out of the way, that'll allow us to concentrate on the other stuff we're doing, and security problems and other general bugs. Any questions or comments? Okay. Now, as far as, so there are a few deprecations, which ordinarily I'd like us to clear out, but I'm not so worried about that. I want to not take off the emphasis on the volume local cache and the NFS encryption. So let's just concentrate on those and make that a priority for the next week or so, and reviewing all the specs. So, yeah, as far as bugs targeted for M1, there's just the one bug I've been working on. So I'm going to take the liberty of raising the priority of that, even though it's my own patch. So that's the one about, we had a regression in train associated with the introduction of the system default volume type. So basically what's happening in some situations, volume creation will either fail or you're going to wind up with a volume type you don't expect. So got to patch up for that. I revised it last week in line with what we discussed at the Cinder meeting for the expected behaviors. So in the old days, if you use, in some of these cases, if you refer to a non-existent volume type, we would just go ahead and create the volume, but it would have no volume type at all. So now that's going to result in an exception. So that's good. And then to test the, I was able to add functional tests to handle creation of volume from snapshots, and I forget, there's two other cases. So I've got functional tests for those. I couldn't figure out how to do a functional test for the case where you've got a glance image that has the metadata on it that indicates the volume type that's supposed to be created for that, if you create a volume from that image. But I did do a Tempest test for that, and even more amazingly, it actually works, except it doesn't completely work. So I guess not all that amazing. So what happens, so I put the test up, it fails, which is supposed to, right? Because I didn't put a depends on, and it was supposed to pass in Stein, and it fails in Stein, but the test itself passes, it's the teardown. And what's happening, so maybe I'll talk to Luigi or something. The problem is, I thought I got the stuff arranged properly. So we create a special volume type and do all this stuff, right? Create an image and all this stuff happens. And then we delete the only volume of that volume type, which should then make it possible to delete the volume type itself. And when I look in the logs, I can see that the polling for that volume returns a 404, so the volume is gone. And then I see the call made in the API log to go ahead and delete the volume type, and then it returns and says the volume type's in use, so it returns a 400. So I haven't worked out exactly why that's the case, because it shouldn't be happening. Anyway, if anybody has any, I may grab Luigi later to talk about that, and I'm just sort of rambling. So that's everything we've had on the agenda. Since everybody here has blocked off a 2-hour spot, what I think I would like to do is just say, end the meeting, and then the key priorities that we'd like people to review are please look at the volume local cache patches and the NFS encryption. So basically you'd have 40 minutes of time that you've expected to be furthering away at the meeting that you could go ahead and review a patch with. Any general comments before we quit for today? All right, I'd like to thank everybody for participating. It's been helpful. Please, volume local cache and NFS encryption. And I'm just going to close this, and we'll have some time to go review stuff. And then Jay, I'll send you a link to the recording as soon as it's available, and you can post it on YouTube.
Okay.
Thanks for attending the mid-cycle. This is a rush cycle, and right, so we're 16 weeks away from release, and they're coming up fast. But thanks for everyone for attending. There's always the mailing list and IRC, and I'll see you next week at the Cinder meeting. Thanks, and have a good day. And I'm going to stop.
Thanks,
Thank you.